Hello, everybody! Welcome to another episode of Cosplay Myths Podcasts. I'm Rebecca, and this is my co-host, Deborah.
Hey!
Hey! So, last week we started a conversation on fabric, and after a few tangents, we ran out of time and never got around to doing something really important, such as discussing the different types of fabric in greater detail. We did do some discussion last week, but this week we want to really focus on the main types of fabrics you're going to see, because there are a lot of fabrics out there, and we're just going to be covering the main categories, but there are a lot of subset categories that we highly recommend you look into because you might find something you really like using amongst them. But these are the most commonly known ones, and we're going to start off. Deborah, where are we starting off on?
I guess we'll start with the first of the list, which, as we mentioned last week, cotton. And that one is your most common fabric that you will find everywhere. There, especially up here in Alaska, you'll find more quilt stores that sell cotton, so it's a lot easier to get your hands on. And because of its diversity and with patterns, its thickness, different things like that, it's more versatile in the sense of what you can use it for. It's not the softest of fabrics, I'll give you that. But as you can see in the photo here, it can be pretty thick. This one is probably your more common of cotton types that you'll find. There are different types of cotton types. Those are usually labeled, and depending on the seller, they could be, and the weave itself, it can change the type of cotton that it is. But honestly, cotton, because it is one of the more cheaper fabrics, it is easier to get your hands on, and it's great for beginners. That is what most seamstresses, or even if you go to Joann's and just talk, they're like, yeah, cotton will be your best friend starting out, because you don't have to worry about it fraying as easily or jamming up your sewing machines. And then also just, it comes in a lot of pretty colors.
Yes. And it's kind
know,
of
Rebecca,
that...
have you... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Cotton is one of those where it's just it's almost instinctively we recognize it, because I think it's it's the most familiar.
Yeah. And just like any fabric, the weave of the fabric will determine its density and things like that. That's stuff that you get along more, you learn more along as you get to more complicated materials and or projects. But again, cotton, it'll be your best friend. You can make, I don't really recommend pants, just because you need some stretch, and most cottons aren't stretchy, but they're good for some shirts, jackets, cardigans, things that you don't need a whole lot of stretch in, clothing wise.
Masks.
But yeah, masks, exactly. Because of its density, most cotton, there are some thinner cottons that aren't great, but because of its density, it's great for your masks. I still tend to double layer my cotton, but that's just out of pure habit. But I know there are some of the thicker cottons that you don't need to. But yeah. One thing that I like about cotton too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So there's actually if you ever go to the store that have their character section, you can also get cotton that comes with Harry Potter, or if you're looking kid stuff, Little Einstein.
Oh, the novelty cottons.
Yes, that's the name. Yes, I admittedly have a little too much fun in that section at Joann's.
Yes, no, I whenever we were going when my mom and I were going shopping for mask fabrics, eventually I was informed I was not allowed to buy any more or go to Joann's by myself, because she was kind of afraid of how much more fabric I would come home with.
Oh yeah. Well, because whenever you're buying fabric, you buy it by the yard, and they'll price it by the yard, and so you can get a good like even just for masks or, cotton that, it's granted most of it's usually about $4, give or take, depending on the brand. But you can get a yard of fabric, which is like this much. And
and about it's really it's like a yard this way, and then it's like
about
a bazillion the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you get a lot of masks out of that.
Oh yeah, so that's dangerous. That's dangerous. Granted, also for those who are going fabric shopping, you don't need to buy just a yard. If you need something less than that, the cutting people will go through the measurements with you, being like, okay, do you need this much? Do you need this much? So don't forget about just buying a yard, and the price will adjust itself accordingly. So don't worry about it.
Yep. Okay. And then very similar to cotton is our next fabric, which kind of has two ways of pronouncing the name. It's either muslin or muslin.
Yeah. I believe, as far as I'm aware, muslin is how most people call it, but I have heard a couple of people say muslin. So it's kind of like tomato. It's not really a big deal. You could still, it's like tomato. You know what it is. Now, muslin is cheaper than cotton, actually. That can range anywhere from like $1.50 to $3 usually, depending on its usually like the weave or if it's organic, different things like that. But it is one of the cheaper ones. However, some muslins tend to be more thick. So you definitely have to kind of test it to see if this is something you're going to be able to work with. But it is cheaper than cotton, and I know a lot of people use it for when they are creating their own patterns. They'll use muslin actually as their testers. As this is also another material, it does not fray easily, and because of its density, it works really well for pattern making.
The other thing that we were discussing earlier is some fun notes. Muslin is actually used a lot in historical cosplays because it's very reminiscent of what they would have used back then. Also, it's used in medicine and other I can't say the word.
Utilitarian? Is that the word?
Yes, that one.
Okay?
Yes. So it's very much one of those working fabrics. So it's not just used for cosplay; it's used in the outside world for various things. I think you mentioned it was used for like bandages and stuff.
Yeah, once upon a time it was for if I'm remembering my facts correctly, it was used for bandages back in the day, as well as for if you were making medicine and you had your leaves, you would you would have your cup and then the muslin over it, and then you just put the stuff on top and then drain it accordingly and whatnot, squeeze out what you needed.
Yeah.
Again, I know nothing about like old-fashioned herbalism.
Medicine.
That's the word. Yeah. Medicine, herbalism, oil making, but I know muslin is used quite often in that, depending on, I think you need like a looser weave if I remember correctly, but muslin does generally come in that looser weave, so it tends to be used for that.
Okay. So that's cotton and muslin, which are two of the more versatile and kind of all-purpose fabrics. As we go down the list, you're gonna see that the fabrics go from very versatile, very commonplace to being, or like we see them a lot. They're used for a lot. They can be used for a lot to where they might actually have like very specialized purposes the further down we go.
Yes.
Speaking of another,
pulling up the list.
Yeah. Speaking of ones that are very versatile and used for lots of things, both in cosplay and out of cosplay, our next one on the list is linen.
Yes. Linen tends to be sorry, brain freezing, caffeine is kicking in. pirate shirts. That one, like cosplay wise, tends to be the more common one to use because of it. While it is similar to cotton and muslin, it is the more lightweight but also durable material. The one here will be, this one's a little bit of a thicker weave, but it's still actually pretty light. But again, this is the really good, loose, puffy kind of material that you can get, and still it breathes wonderfully. So this could be like the
Think
more
of your bed sheets.
the more pirate. Yeah, there's bed sheets. What else did we list on for linen? But yeah,
yeah, mostly
it's
it's
just
used
another
for sheets and yeah. So the first three kind of sound like they're used for more everyday clothing for hardworking people who are going to be out and about doing things. Not for the nobles, but for if you're a pirate or a merchant or a farmer and you're doing a historical cosplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they would, even the nobles will use linen. They'll use the nicer ones. But because linen has such a tight weave on it, but it's still, I don't remember exactly what it was, but because it is more durable than cotton itself, so this would be nobles would still use linen, certain linens. Because there are some nice ones. Like there's some shiny linens I found. That might be more synthetic.
Ooh.
That might be more synthetic for like nowadays, but maybe back then they still used it. I'm not a historical gown person, so I can't say for sure. But hey, Renaissance people, hit me up if I'm quoting this correctly.
Yeah, no, any Renaissance cosplayers out there, any tips or tricks or pointers you have or knowledge, feel free to leave a comment down below.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I know the people who run the Three Barons Renaissance Fair, like the actors, they go to extremes to get their accuracy on their costumes. I've had several friends and family members actually. My eldest brother, he's with them, and he goes full. He, if you ever find him, he's one of the guys in full Roman armor, and all of that is authentic. It is real metal, real leather. I believe he tends to use more cotton than linen, but just all of that. They go to extremes. So admiration for you guys, because I've heard there was one lady, she hand embroidered one of the gowns, which beautiful. That
is amazing. Kudos to them for doing that.
Oh yeah, it's one of those people who have, you know, the little old grandmas who, you know, love to embroider, and they're going to take every opportunity to get their grandkids, you know, to look cool in a Renaissance outfit.
Yes. All right, moving on to our next fabric, satin.
The bane of my existence.
Yes, you've mentioned that in previous episodes.
Yes. As much as I complain about it, it is a great material. It's just one of the ones you have to be careful with because of its silky nature. It can be difficult to work with. I tend to use probably like double or triple the amount of pins than I would normally, just to keep the sucker from moving when I'm pinning stuff together. But as you see, like in the photo here, this one actually looks like it's a thicker satin. There are many different types of satins. So some of them, like I know we mentioned last week, some of them don't stretch. That is the more common type of satin. However, there is another type of satin that it's a little bit duller, shine-wise, but it does actually have a stretch. It's a little bit more durable, and it's slightly easier to work with. You still have to be careful, but it doesn't fray as much as your typical satins. And I can't remember the name for it for the life of me, but when you find it, you find it. It's really hard to find up here in Alaska. I have to special order mine in. I usually get my fabrics from a couple different online sites, which we can list later for you. But yeah, there's Satin is your one of your more shinier fabrics. It'll have one shiny side, one dull side. You can use both. You don't have to use just the shiny side. I've actually used the dull side for a pair of shorts I made one time for a cosplay, just because I liked that color more than I liked the shiny.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, satin, let's see.
Lace is the next one. Oh, you
lace,
said you have something else to. You had something else to say about satin?
I think that's about all it was. I was talking aloud when I was reading our note.
Yeah.
I have most of this
the
memorized.
only other thing Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Do better than me. But yeah, so the next one is lace. And lace, mostly it's used for details and decor. It's not really I guess you were calling them base fabrics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So unless you're going for like a haute, I can never say this word. Haute decor? Couture is the word. Yes. I can kind of speak French. Unless you're going for a more dramatic kind of look, usually you have your lace and then you have a fabric underneath it. Depending on what kind of look you're going for, it can be a shiny or a matte material, but it's never just lace. Unless, again, you're doing a standard, maybe a shirt where you just wear a bra under it, or just a standard lace shirt, but usually it's lace and then something over it, or under it, sorry. I know a lot of people will use it to for some historical gowns. Actually, they will they'll cut the lace along the pattern to and then pin it to the base material, so you can still have that nice lace at the bottom without like a weird seam line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and there are many different types of laces. Both there's woven, knit, sequence, etc. Very, very a lot, and they come in different shapes and sizes and stretch. So that means there is a wide variety of lace, and I'm like actually sitting here, and it's like, yeah, no, lace is kind of all over the place.
Yep. You'll find lace doesn't have to be just flowers. I know that's the most common kind of lace, is like, with flowers and whatnot. But I have lace like where it's just patterns. There's no floral on it whatsoever. So you don't have to get a floral lace. Well, that is a more common one to find, especially at Joann's. Joann's has for those who do shop at Joann's here, they know this lace. It's a very specific floral pattern with small flowers. And that's the most standard lace up here. Whereas if you go anywhere else, or on occasion, they'll have some other types of lace. I haven't been able to find any recently. But you can also, I've seen lace that has like dragons or odd shapes and patterns and whatnot. So it doesn't have to be just flowers. So that's the nice thing about lace. And there is stretch lace too. So if you're making a stretchy garb and you need stretchy lace, there is stretchy lace.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of activity on the street out in front of my window. So I'm just like, ooh, car.
Oh, I know, right? You gotta love it. My cat keeps moving and like being just really cute, and she's right to the side. So if you ever see me looking over that way, it's because I'm staring at my cat, who, you guys, I think the running joke lately has been, when do you hear the cat snoring? Because she's right next to my bed in her little hammock. She's really cute, but I know she knows she's cute.
All right, and that ties up lace, and I'm going to have to look for the dragon lace because now I want it. I don't know what I will do with it, but I want the dragon lace.
I'll have to see if I can find it again, and I'll send it to you sometime. But it was a long time ago that I saw it. I think it was a handmade thing on Etsy, so we'll see.
Oh. Either way, still, very pretty. I love the idea of it. But moving on, continuing on with our list, leather. Now, last time we were talking about leather, it is kind of unique amongst the fabrics we're going to talk about because it has no grain line. And as a quick review, Deborah, what is grain line? Because I kind of remember, but don't.
Don't put me on the spot like this. Shoot, I know we talked about it last week, but it is
I think it was like
lines. It should be the lines of fiber that shows which way it's the direction of the fibers, pretty much. So you see the lines.
Yeah.
And usually the grain lines will follow along with like the stretch.
The stretchiness? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness for
Casey.
Casey.
Save the photos.
Thank you, Casey. Yes.
Yeah,
so like, grain lines. So there's the grain lines, and then that kind of tells you what way the stretch is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
but yeah,
and that's
it's fiber.
Yeah. But yeah, so leather is unique as it does not have that. Now, that does not mean it cannot be stretchy. There are stretchy leathers out there, but they're not very stretchy, so don't count on it being stretchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if it's real leather, it's, again, I'm not an expert on this. I could be very wrong. I've never worked with real leather myself. I've only worked with faux leather, which is a fake leather pretty much. And those actually do have a grain line. So I'm not, as far as I know, because real leather is made from animal skin, I don't believe there should not be a grain line since it's usually fibers. But most real leather, unless you have, I think usually the process is you heat it up and then you have to get a material like slowly just kind of stretch it. But it's not an easy process, and you also thin out the leather when you're stretching it. But let's see. But yeah, leather, because it is so different, you require a whole different set of skills. Your everyday seamsters skills is only going to take you so far because leather is so thick and different. Your standard needle and thread is not going to work. You need a very specific thread, a very specific needle, and a whole different set of equipment to work with it. Most of your standard sewing machines cannot take real leather. You either need a heavy duty machine, or I believe there's a specialized, I think you need a specialized sewing machine, but most people tend to prefer that you hand sew it just because machines don't work very well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think like on some show I saw someone working with leather, and it takes a really big needle, a huge needle, and it, like the machine they were using, they were hand cranking it because they were trying to get the thread into the same existing holes.
Yeah. Yep. It's a lot. It is one of the materials I have not worked with that I would like to try it someday, but because one, real leather is much more expensive. Well, at least up here, it's pretty expensive. I don't know about you guys in lower 48. Maybe you guys luck out and it's not too bad, but real leather up here tends to be pretty pricey. We do have some specialists up here that tend to be around at the conventions and whatnot, so you can actually talk to them and they'll usually give you some pointers. I bought a lovely leather corset from them. It's lasted me, we're like 6 years and going now, and it looks like I just bought it. So I mean, it's definitely very durable if you take good care of it. Yeah, like it's a gorgeous corset. It's a blue dyed with this, I believe they use a solder tool from what it looks like. Soldering is a heated metal tip, and they carve it in. But they carved in this beautiful Celtic material, Celtic design on it. And yeah, it's wonderful. Real leather will last you a long time if you take good care of it. Which is the reason why a lot of people prefer to use it when making like gauntlets or chokers and just different things like that, because they're in areas that they're going to get a lot of wear, it'll last you quite a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we were actually talking about that. Like the types of garments that leather would use are gauntlets, corsets, some parts of clothing, boots, headpieces, chokers. But that's pretty much it's. I know occasionally you'll see it in jackets and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Excuse me.
Leather jackets are a huge thing.
Yes, there is a spider on my table, and I am afraid of spiders.
Ooh.
So this is going absolutely
Burn your house down now. Gotta burn the house down now. Sorry.
Pretty much. So if you see me acting a little squirrely, it's because I'm watching the spider and trying to work up the courage to do something about it.
You can do it. I believe in you. I guess I'll distract the stream with the jackets. But yeah, so, leather jackets. Those suckers are expensive. Good Lord. But oh my gosh, they're so nice.
Yes.
I feel like it's standard that everyone have at least like one nice leather jacket. Like not fake leather, real leather.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yep. But yeah, and then after leather, we were going to talk about silk, which also kind of leads into the next topic of chiffon. And there's a reason for that. Silk is like, most people know of silk. It's that really, really, really shiny material. It's, yes. And the one shown here on the screen is actually a handmade silk. So it's, very expensive because it's handmade, and also you can kind of see the grain lines. Factory made silk will actually be smoother, but it's still just like this really, really, really shiny material. Actually very famous because it's like, if you know anything about history, you know about the Silk Road and how that helped do a lot of trade between the East and the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, silk was still is a highly coveted material. As you can see with this silk, it's not going to be your standard silk that you see at like Joann's or other places that, you know, while they are still more expensive, there will be probably one of your most expensive. As this, you can actually see the fibers in it, and because it's handmade, it is more expensive, but also just the flow you get with handmade silk is entirely different than your standard silk. This would be something that you would see the rich wearing, or back then the nobles, highly coveted material, and still is. As it's again it's not synthetic. Well, there is synthetic silks that you can get nowadays, but usually silks, because of its lightweightness, it is very good if you want flowy, kind of swishy, the more majestic materials. It is one of the harder ones to work with as well because of its lightweightness, but honestly, it's nice. It is really nice. If you ever need a good dramatic, is the best way I could put it. This will be your best friend. I had a silk skirt that I made for one of my most dramatic gowns. I'm told because without the skirt, it's not quite as regal, I'm told. But when I wear the skirt with the specific gown, it adds a certain regalness, I've discovered. But if you ever need that dramatic whoosh when you're walking, silk will get you it.
Think fairy tale / princess gown.
Yeah. And it doesn't even necessarily
And
have
that
to be gown. Like silk pants, those suckers are comfortable. They look great, they feel great, and just like it feels like you're wearing like almost like nothing, honestly, is the best way to put it. But like silk is also pretty durable despite its lightweightness.
Yep. Cool history fact. If anybody remembers some history and or the Mythbusters, they'll know that silk was durable enough that soldiers would actually wear it and it could protect them because I'm remembering something that I watched a very long time ago, but like the Mythbusters were testing an old myth where silk would protect soldiers, and it turned out it was actually plausible, I believe. Just because silk was so strong in layers, especially, that it was just like, oh, that worked really well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Silk can be also anywhere from like your shiny material to your more matte, depending on what you're able to find. So because of its that diversity, it is one of my favorite materials to use if I need a more dramatic or lightweight material.
Is it very hard to work with?
It can be depending on like if it's synthetic or more organic. Organic ones tend to be again a little bit harder, but it doesn't fray quite as easily as like satin does. But because of its silkiness, it likes to move. So you have to be really careful when you're pinning it, as well as when you are sewing it. I have this satin because of this. You have to go very slow on your sewing machines. Now, unless you're an expert at working with it, then you have it down to a T. But even though like I've worked with it quite a bit, I still have to go very slow. I have to double check my hemlines when sewing specific gowns, just to make sure that it didn't move. I can't tell you just the big A-line skirt that I made. The number of times I had to re-sew the one spot because it kept moving when I sewed it.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as mentioned earlier, chiffon goes in with silk because chiffon is it's a sheer version of silk. So it's kind of it operates like silk, looks like silk, but instead of being opaque, it's see-through.
Yep. It is known as, again, the sheer version of silk or even nylon. Chiffon definitely comes in many different colors. Not usually patterns. You don't see a pattern chiffon very much. Granted, there are some that I found rarely in like fabric districts in the lower 48. But it's mostly the best way for those who aren't familiar with chiffon. If you've ever seen a bridesmaid gown, that's usually what chiffon is made out of. Or the bridesmaid's made out of chiffon usually, which is you got your base layer and then you got that flowy see-through material. That's how I've had most people relate to chiffon. It's bridesmaid's gown. But yeah, this is also a good material for if you're looking for flowy, majestic kind of look. You can use it in other things. It's just usually chiffon tends to be the more top layer, never the base, unless you want like something see-through.
Kind of like lace.
Yeah. Granted, again, haute couture tends, because it is couture, will use chiffon as your base because it's dramatic gowns.
Yay. All right, we're moving right along on this list. What's up?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying my nose keeps clogging up, so if I sound a bit weird, it's just my nose.
Yep. All right, so we're moving right along on this list. Next up is what Deborah described as most people's bane, velvet.
Yeah. The number of times I've had my friends who are with me whenever we go fabric shopping, real velvet it is very plush and silky, and just it's very soft. It's very thick. They hate it. They despise velvet. It's so funny that a lot of cosplayers hate working with velvet. There's even there is a fake velvet. I can't remember. I think it's called crushed velvet, if I remember correctly. That you can find at Joann's or even just about anywhere, honestly. But real velvet tends to be very thick and plush. It's most commonly used for, at least cosplay wise, used for cloaks or if you have like a thicker winter kind of cosplay you're doing. But real velvet tends to be pretty pricey. Last I saw, if I remember correctly, Joann's was selling it for about 25 to 30 bucks a yard.
Yee!
But yeah, it is very expensive. But for those who are doing, I know some people like it because, again, it's thick, it's plush, and it has a very unique sheen to it, aside from satin, because despite it having a sheen, it's a very matte sheen to it. But as one side is plush, one side is also matte, so you can also flip it inside out. So if you want the nice softness just on yourself, but you don't want the softness on the outside, you can layer it with another material, or you can just leave it as is. Not as quite as pretty, but you know, you do you. This way you have that nice soft interior. But one thing that sucks with working with it is when you're cutting it, the fuzz gets everywhere. Oh my gosh. I hope you have a vacuum on hand and a lint roller, because just like glitter, that stuff gets everywhere. Just everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
I do know there are some Victorian gowns that were made out of velvet. I've seen a few. Those suckers weigh a lot. Real velvet is not very light. But
I can remember. Yeah, no, it looks very pretty, but I'm like, now that you mention it, I do remember like descriptions or discussions about velvet gowns.
Yeah, it's a very nice material, and nowadays there is a lot of fake velvets. Depending on the seller, if you look, you can actually find a pretty authentic fake velvet that still looks like real velvet, but it's cheaper and a little bit lighter. And that one, we found it once. It's been we haven't been able to find it since. But we found a black one that you could not tell that it was fake velvet. And it was definitely much lighter, and we were able to get it for my friend's, was it Tubi from Your Automata cosplay? We were able to get that material. It looked absolutely wonderful. It looks like real velvet. Not quite as heavy, so we were able to work with that. Whereas I one time got like crushed velvet, which it's very obvious it's not real velvet, and it looks kind of like cheap costume material, honestly. Like, it's not the best.
Yep. Sorry, spider is still on desk. So
just squish it.
I don't like squishing spiders or bugs or anything when it's on desk. Okay, moving on. Fleece, which it's kind of the oddball of the list because it's not really used, or at least it's not a commonly used cosplay piece. It's more used for keeping warm rather than actual, like, unless you're making a fleece t-shirt, you're not really gonna use it for much. I mean, if you're gonna be a lumberjack, I guess you need one, but
yeah, fleece that I know of, I haven't really seen many people use it unless like because it tends to be more of a, like, you wear pajama pants made out of fleece, your blankets, Even some hoodies are made out of fleece. I believe the one I'm wearing actually is fleece. But it's not very commonly used for cosplay. I've seen some cosplayers who use it to line their cosplays they're planning to wear like in the winter or colder weather, things like that. It's especially common up here for Alaskans because, you know, it's cold. But I haven't really, I don't know what you would use it for other cosplays otherwise. Because I don't think fursuit people would really use it. So that one, it's like I'm not too sure, but it is one of the more common. It's like one of the biggest materials you'll find at our fabric stores up here, like especially Joann's, is you'll find a huge section of different types of fleece. There's so many different types of fleece. So I'm not really too sure like what cosplay stuff you can use it for, but that's just me. I've never used fleece in my cosplays unless I'm making like a hoodie or a specific warmed clothes piece, but nothing like fantasy wise I've used it for.
Yeah. But if anyone in our audience has ever used fleece for anything other than lining or pajama pants or something like that, we'd be more than happy to hear from you. So leave a comment in the comments below and let us know, because I have no very little experience. Like, I have Halloween costume experience with any cosplay, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely hit us up.
We're always willing to learn. That's why we started all this, so that we can help people learn and learn ourselves. Alrighty. And now we're getting towards the end of the list, which is kind of good because we're running out of time. The next one is performer's fabric, which, contrary to the name, it is not just used by performers, but it is generally a very stretchy, shiny material. If you've ever seen gymnasts or ice skaters or baton twirlers, I was actually a baton twirler when I was younger, and I think this is what we used. It's a very stretchy material. It's very shiny. It puts you in mind of it's usually a blended material that has spandex, and then it, like, if I didn't know better, I would say it had silk in it, but probably looking back, it might not have. It just was a very shiny material. And it was very breathable. It was very flexible. It moved with you. And that was like the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used performance fabric myself on a cosplay or two because of it's lightweight. It's really great. So if you are a sweaty person, it won't show the sweat as easily. So like, I know that really helps. Especially if you're hot weather. Oof. But I do know it is also one of the more forgiving fabrics to work with, so you don't have to worry about like little holes when you're pinning it, depending on like how shiny it is. The less bulky it is, obviously the easier to be to work with. But it is also because it's so forgiving. If you do I know a lot of people use it for gloves. Say you do like end up making it just a smidge too small, or like your hemlines don't match up properly, it's not quite as obvious because you have that stretch, so you can pull it and it's just like, oh, you know, I messed up the line right here, like on the finger. It's not very obvious, and you can't really tell that the top is bigger than the bottom unless you're looking in the inside. So it is one of the more forgiving fabrics to work with. But because it is performer's fabric, it is going to be one of your more pricier ones.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty rare to find that stuff on sale. So it's just like, eek. Though Alaskans, those who did the SenchuCon, what was it, 2019? Where we had our dance at the Egan Center. Those of you remember, we had to share the Egan Center with the dancing competition. So a lot of those costumes that you saw those girls wearing were made from that material.
But and then the very last one is latex and spandex, which the best way to like everyone has seen this at some point. Latex spandex, it's yoga pants, it's sports bras, it's shorts, it's latex is most like that's spandex. Latex you're gonna see more in cat suits, so think Catwoman. Think what is the Marvel hero or the Marvel villain? The Black Cat?
I think.
Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
No, she's DC. If you're
There's
talking
Catwoman
about
who's DC, but either way, this is the kind of stuff that you would think of in a cat suit. Anytime I see this stuff, I always think of Catwoman.
Yeah. No, the image that we're showing here is actually, it's a stretch latex, which is it's very similar to performance fabric in that regard to stretchiness, but it's not quite as breathable, unfortunately. There are lots of latex blends. There's latex spandex blends. They tend to essentially go together quite often. But again, this is the type of stuff you'll see yoga pants and sports bras because of its spandex tends to be pretty breathable, just like performance fabric. However, it is a little bit more cheaper than your performance fabric. Don't ask me why, but it is. But it's also dependent on your area. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I'm thinking it'd be cheaper just because more people want it. Performers fabric, I'm thinking, is kind of a niche thing. Unless you're doing something like performery, you're not really going to need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Granted, I do know some people use performance fabrics for yoga pants, just because it also comes in the pretty patterns.
That makes sense to me, actually. And I mean, if it's really comfy.
Yeah, there is some performance fabrics that is a latex spandex blend of some sort. That's how they get their stretchiness, but it's a blend. I don't know the exact, all of the materials used in performers fabric, but I do know latex and or spandex is often used in them. But yeah, it's your stretchy material. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, you go ahead.
Yeah, and so latex and spandex is your stretchy material. It is also one of the more versatile, and again, one of the more forgiving, depending on the blend itself. So I do know there's a cotton latex you can get, or spandex. My apologies, a cotton spandex blend. So you can definitely get different. There's different textures, but superhero costumes tend to be the more commonly used ones for these.
Yep. Yes. Okay. So that ties up our whole list of different fabrics we wanted to discuss with you. As we said at the beginning of this podcast, there are a lot of subcategories for fabrics, and there's a lot of fabrics that we just didn't cover because of various reasons. But that doesn't mean you can't use them in cosplay, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't kind of just look into them just for fun, especially if you're very interested in cosplay and want to know how to make your own. Our recommendation is to learn more about these is to visit your local fabric stores. Check them out, ask questions, just go and look, go and touch and feel and go, what is this? Is it stretchy? Does it pull? What does it do? And then do research on fabric websites. Fabricwholesale.com was one of the websites Deborah was telling me about, but I'm sure if you look around the internet, you will find a plethora of websites out there that tell you all about fabric. And also, I would also recommend looking at patterns. Because Deborah was saying that many patterns will have a recommended fabric on them. And that can kind of tell you, oh, hey, if this pattern is recommending I use this type of fabric, there must be a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
That doesn't mean you have to listen, though.
Yeah, I sure don't. But I pay the price for that too. But yeah, and also one of the places I recommend going on is Etsy, actually. Etsy, there's a lot of different sellers on there, and you don't have to buy just like a yard or even a quarter. You can actually, a lot of sellers will have what's called samples, and there are these squares, usually like yay big. They'll send you these sample sizes for usually about $1. And this will actually give you a good idea of like how the material will feel and whatnot. And this way you can also experiment. A lot of sites will sell sample sizes like that. And again, they're generally sold anywhere from like $1.50. The most expensive one I found was like $2, but that's also because it was a very nice material. It was more organic. But I definitely recommend it. If you ever go on an Etsy seller and you don't see their sample stuff, message them and be like, hey, are you selling samples for this? And most of the time they'll be like, yeah, they'll send you a direct link and they'll reopen a specific thing just so you can buy a sample. So I definitely recommend Etsy for sure. Because also usually they'll list, if you're concerned about, I do know there's those who are concerned about sticking to certain, what's the word I'm looking for? Materials used in creating. Want to make sure, yeah.
Authenticity, maybe. I'm not too sure. If some people they
are
might
to
also
very
be
specific materials.
Yeah. No, latex in my family would be forbidden because my mother is allergic to it. So like I would not be able to do latex in my house. I'm not even sure we could do spandex. Well, I think we could have spandex in the house, but I don't know if we can do cutting of it. But either way, it would be something I'm not sure we would want in the house.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, just, check out different sites. Amazon sometimes sells fabric. I'm not too sure. On that one, I would look at reviews, but I would probably stick towards more like authentic fabric sites. Definitely, obviously, look at reviews on the sites if you're not familiar with it or you don't have anybody who's ever bought from that site before. Definitely look at reviews and whatnot. But if you're unsure if a material, because when you're shopping for wigs or even clothes, the lighting on the site is going to be different than when you get it in person. So I always recommend buying a sample before you buy the fabric itself.
Yep. But yeah, that is fabric. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a question in the comments or send an email off to Deborah. Her email address should be down below in the little description for our video. Yeah. And again, don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to ask questions or leave us comments. Let us know if we got something wrong. Because we're learning just like you guys are. I'm learning a lot by this series.
Me too, actually. I didn't know as much as when we started this episode, when we started doing research for it, I didn't know quite as much as I thought I did. So this was a learning experience for me too. I finally learned the difference between cotton, muslin, and linen, so that was nice.
Yes, that's very nice. And it's for the three of them, it's like there's not, it's almost subtlety differences. So it's very easy. Like I understand very well how people confuse them. It's like, unless you really know what you're looking for, they're very similar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it doesn't help that the fabric stores put them all right next to each other.
Yes, so you can go from one end to the other and be like, oh, I'm in a different fabric. Whoops. Yep. But all right, so that's our episode for this week. What's up?
No, good. Nope.
Yeah, that's our episode for this week. We will see you again, if my little calendar thing will pull up, on April 3rd. We will have another episode. See you then at 2:15. And I hope you guys have a lovely 2 weeks. Stay safe, stay warm. Keep an eye on
Spring
the
is
roads
almost
as
here.
they are being. Spring's almost here. Yes.
Hopefully, no more snow dumps. We'll cross our fingers, dot our eyes.
I'm expecting it, and if I'm disappointed, yay!
Yeah.
But if it comes,
no say.
Yeah. Alrighty. It was good talking with y'all. Have a good weekend. Be well.
Yep. Bye, y'all.
Bye.